Erexson Family Reunion is held at the Bridgeport Community Center on August 20th, 1983.
It's so late, Erexson. And tell who your husband was when you married him. My husband was Harvey Erexson, and I married him on December the 24th, 1916. Now introduce your children. My oldest daughter, Velma Oak, was born in 1918, September 9th. And who came next? And then Leo, my son Leo, that was killed in World War II. He was our second child, and he was born June the 9th, 1920. And Geneva is the third child, the fair one. And she was born in September the 11th, 1922. Leonard was born October the 13th, 1924, and my baby girl was born October the 27th, 1926, and her name is Mary Sliger. Can we get Dean? Go ahead and get Dean. Dean? Okay, now introduce Dean. This is Dean Jefferson, my daughter-in-law. And she was married to Leo August the 16th, 1942.
Camera side.
Harold and I were married.
Hold up your head, Lisa, and look into the camera.
When did you get married? Remember?
No, 1940. 1940.
No, we were married in 1947, October the 19th. October 19th. And Lisa was born March 8th, 1961.
Okay.
Thank you. We're all around here. What do we do?
I'll look at the pan.
We're going to sit over here and say, wait till we get organized. He's taking now.
This is more fun.
Okay. You want to know when we were married? February 7th, 1942 in Tullahoma, Tennessee. And this is my oldest daughter, Elena Baldwin. She was born May 20th, 1943. That's right. And my son, Merritt, number 2, born July 30th, 1946. And David was born October the 15th, 1946.
No, I think it was 49. So.
49! 1949, I'm thinking wrong. And then Adelie, she's born June 4th, 51. And Negro was born November 24th, 1957. Right. That's it. Oh boy, that was hard.
Thank you.
Baldwin. And we were married December. I'm married to Stanley Baldwin. And we were married December the 5th of 1966. Then we had Amy Baldwin, and she was born November the 6th, 1971. Then came Brooklyn, Brooks Churchill Baldwin, who was born March the 12th, 1973. And then there's little Abigail, and she was born November the 23rd, 1977. And that's all. All right, thank you.
The one-eyed monster we're looking at.
You're supposed to talk with your family.
Well, normally I say all these things myself, but I'm going to let Nancy do it this time since she likes to talk.
Go ahead. I'm Nancy. We were married July the 5th, 1968. And this is number 1. This is Cindy, and she was born July 22nd, 1970. And this is number 2. This is Marianne. She was born August 24th, 1972.
Your name is?
My name is Merritt Litherland. 2 R's, 2 E's, and 2 T's.
Marianne was born in 71.
I was born in 71.
Okay. Maybe Kelly, it takes a couple seconds for the thing to talk about. Start again.
Alrighty.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm Audley, and I married Joe Baumgartner March 18th, 1978. And this is her daughter, Angela Beth, and she was born on July 4th, 1981.
Thank you.
Now, let's
Push the
get
button.
Neat.
Name and Social Security number. No, my name is David Litherland. Lane and I got married on February 26th of this year, 1983.
I'm Lane. This is Ryan. He's 8 years old.
8 years old.
Yeah, birthday March 31st. And this is Ryan. He's 3, July 5th.
My fifth, almost to July 4th.
Almost.
Look over here.
You can say hi? Wave hi?
Oh, good. Thank you. Want to wave to you? Okay. Thank you.
You're supposed to be saying who you are.
Okay, my name is Leonard. Ron, my wife, we were married March 18th, 1945. 1945. We have 2 children. Joe's of April 24th, 1953. 51. Kathy, May the 26th, 1963.
So you were married and your name and age of your children?
Who was married? March
Oh, get your name first.
Well, I'm Joe.
Erexson.
I'm Betty.
This is Joshua, this is Brian, and this is George.
When was Joey born?
Where was you born, George?
1972.
1972, okay. How about you?
September 20th, 1975.
1975.
Joshua was born April 17th, 1980.
Who was we married? March 7th?
March 7th, 1971.
She married better than I do.
Where were you married? What state?
Marrying Indiana.
Married in Indiana? Yeah.
My name is Kathy, and we met in Michigan. I already said that, didn't I?
Yeah.
We were married December 7th, 1975. This is my husband, Tammy.
And what's your last name?
Cottle.
How do you spell that?
Cauddill.
And you live in
Naples, Florida.
Naples, Florida?
Yeah,
Is that right on the ocean?
it's right on the Gulf.
What side? Oh, we're on the Gulf, so it's on the Tampa Bay side.
Right, just south of Tampa.
Okay, we'll be down to see you next time.
Okay. Let us know what day.
Beloved Brian Leroy Sliger, and I found him at Georgeville, Illinois. He was a hillbilly, but I found him in Indiana. Married him in July 14th, 1945. In June 5th, 1947, Eric Kent Sliger was born. So that completed our family. Okay?
What was Roy doing at the time?
Oh, he was in the Air Force.
Air Force Mechanic at Georgeville, Illinois. Who's going to do the talking here now?
You.
Okay, what you ask the questions, I'll answer the questions.
Okay, no, you already told us how you met your wife. That's all.
Yeah, we met in this bar, you see. Okay, I'm Eric Sliger. This is my wife, Emma. We were married May the 24th, 1968. Kim was born May the 23rd.
Not 19.
2 years later, 1970.
Okay.
Kelly was born August 3rd, 1971.
Yeah, I'll take this message. We're going to send it to a town hall.
Say a word, Kelly. Say it.
Say hi, Kurt. Hi, Kurt.
sister or boyfriend?
Yes.
Can you say so?
Hi, Billy. Yeah.
Where do y'all live?
We live in Erexson, Tennessee.
Chattanooga.
Is that a suburb of Chattanooga?
Suburb of suburb. What do you say? Suburb of Chattanooga.
Is it hilly and rocky out there?
No, it's hilly, but not rocky.
That's when you got married. When were you born?
Born August
1895.
That's the year.
August 18th, 1895?
That's right.
What county?
Grant County, Indiana.
Indiana.
Right.
When did you move to Illinois?
In 1916, December the 29th.
With your family?
My husband.
How many great grandchildren do you have?
I have 11 great grandchildren.
13 great grandchildren?
Well, it's 11 great grandchildren. I have 9 grandchildren.
Okay.
A few years ago, about this chicken that gave his life, way back yonder about 60-something years ago. If he hadn't have given his life, none of us would have been here today.
Right.
Tell us about that chicken.
Yes. I was looking at a place, taking care of a lady in bed, and she run the chicken field. I couldn't pick the chicken. Well, she said, Harvey Erexson, looking out there on the road, and you got and ask him if he would pull his chicken for you. And so I did. I was so nice, and asked him so if he would come and pull a chicken for me. So he did. He took that chicken and laid his head down on the wood pile and took it. And that's the way I met my husband.
Is that how you met him?
That's how I met him.
And what year was that?
That was in I'll take that back, it was 13.
So that was 70 years ago. If it hadn't have been for that chicken
Right.
giving his life, none of us would have been here.
That's right.
I am in the process of making pie.
Why are you having to make pie this Sunday afternoon?
Because I made a mistake. I bought overripe peaches.
Too many peaches.
Nobody ate them. Nobody ate them. So now you're going to make
Are you
peaches.
using the overripe now? Those don't look overripe.
I was just using all of them.
Oh, I see you're using every one of them now. I ate one this morning, that was pretty good.
I feel overripe. It's really bad.
Small ones was overripe, right?
Have we got too ripe for anything?
Not for don't take well. Have it sandwich. I ate one this morning, I thought they was a little spoiled.
Yeah, I'm not gonna. Who's actually going to make the pie? Elena. Elena's in the kitchen making the crust. Making the crust. Those look like 50. Mine's y'all is just to do the filling.
Then, Elena's making the pie dough in the kitchen.
Okay.
I'm making a pie dough for the fellow that's peeling the peaches because of the mistake he made buying the overripe peaches.
When we make pie dough, it's Crisco.
No, it's Crisco's, put it in the refrigerator. I had hard to work with.
Crisco
cobbler? Maybe if I do it. Yeah. So that dish right there, take a picture of the dish.
We would like to interview you and talk about your lifespan. At the reunion, we got to record when and how you met Grandpa when you was married, and got to introduce your kids and tell their birth dates and all. But now, we would like to talk with you about all the changes that have taken place in the world since you were born. And having been born in 1895, that was like 30 years after the Civil War. And now it's 1983. In 2 years you'll be 90.
Right.
And so a lot of things have happened, from horse and buggy days to the days that man has walked on Noon?
Let's look at the camera.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So we would like to ask you about the changes and things that were happening during the years, and try to get perspective on all those things. So, first of all, since you were born in 1895, were any of your relatives in the Civil War?
Yes, my grandfather Hatcher was in the Civil War.
You need to speak up. I didn't
My grandfather Hatcher was in the Civil War, and he was in the
That was your mother's dad.
That's my mother's dad. And he had the measles while he was there, and then they settled in his eyes, and he had bad eyes.
Oh.
But then he was from Ohio, did I tell you that? And then he came to Indiana and met my grandmother.
So he was in the Union Army during the Civil War.
Right.
Well, when you were a little girl, did they talk much about Abraham Lincoln? Was he as much as a hero as he is today?
I don't remember. I don't recall a thing that they said.
Okay. Even though he was from Illinois, huh? Well, you were in Indiana then. I had been a Hoosier too, hadn't he? This chair that you're rocking in was your Grandpa Hatcher's.
Right. And I went to live with my grandparents when I was a year and a half old. And of course, I just grew up in this rocking chair.
I bet you did. Now you're getting to rock in it again.
I'm getting to rock in it again.
How long ago did it come back to your house? How long have you had it now?
Probably only 2 or 3 years.
Had been with some other relatives
After
and
my
finally got back
grandmother
to you.
died, and grandmother, my mother took the rocker. And when she passed away, then my older brother took it. And then when he had to break up housekeeping, his wife died. He came to live in an apartment with his oldest daughter, Mildred Clement. And then she kept it for several years, and, well, maybe not several, but a few years. And then she said one day, well, Aunt Flossie, I'd like for you to have this rocker, but I'd like to keep it in your family. And so that's the way
Got back to you.
it got back to me.
Well, when you were growing up, what was lifestyle like? You had horse and buggies. Is that how you got around?
Had horse and buggy, and we either went in the buggy or we walked. And of course, we didn't get very far. If we went about 4 miles, it'd take us half a day to get there.
Oh, yeah.
The gray horse didn't go very fast. And we walked a lot. We always went to church. We walked because we were close enough. And then a group of us would get together and walk another, say, a mile to another church. And Grandpa would take his lantern and walk with us to church. Be a group of young people, but he and Grandma went along. And that wasn't only just one time, but it was several times.
Well, what kind of things could you buy at the stores?
Well, you could buy most anything at the store, where we lived at least, outside of clothing. Maybe you could get some overalls there. But they had dry goods, and they had the grocery, and they even had the post office in the same building, in the same store. And you could buy like crackers and cheese. Your crackers would be in a big barrel, and the pickles would be in a big barrel, and they just reached out in there and get you some pickles. And they bought bread without wrapping. And well, we could buy it for 6 loaves for a quarter.
6 loaves for a quarter for bread.
That was when I was probably 18 years old. I don't know, way back before that, we made our own bread.
Well, you didn't have electricity?
No electricity. Not until after I was married did the electricity come to the little town where I lived.
Running water in the house?
No running water in the house. We had a pump outside. We had a good well, and when the oil field came, and they had a field up above our house, and they had a leak and run down into our well and ruined our drinking water. But Grandpa whitewashed the sides, cleaned it all out, pumped the water out, cleaned it out. We were able to use it, but it wasn't good like it was.
How'd you wash your clothes?
Yeah, no rockabye, you know what that is, like this. And washed that way and on the board. All washboard and stuff.
What kind of gifts would you get for Christmas?
Ah, now you're talking way back when I was a little girl. I remember when I was 6 years old, I got a little coffee grinder.
Oh.
And a banana. And we didn't have Santa Claus. He came while I was asleep, but I never did see him. And Grandpa and Grandma put us out on a chair. And then over Santa Claus filled their shoes with wood chips.
Wood chips.
And now you wouldn't understand this either, but we killed our own meat, and we had hogs hanging up, and they'd take what we called the bladder, and they'd clean it out, and then they'd blow it up, and that was my balloon.
Oh.
So now that's one of them, and I never had a Christmas tree until I was, probably 12, 13 years old, I don't know. Maybe not that old. But anyway, I had one, and some of my little friends came in, so I probably wasn't that old.
So you grew up in your grandparents' home.
Right.
Just you, and you had a couple brothers, but they lived with
They lived with my father.
with your dad.
And I lived with my grandparents, and I had an uncle who was 8 years older than me, and he was just like a brother to me.
That was Uncle
Charlie Hatcher.
Charlie Hatcher.
Uncle Charlie Hatcher. And we just grew up together, and we only lived in one house, only one summer and one winter. And that winter I was 6 years old, 6, 7. We had about a mile to walk to school, and we would walk down a railroad track, and so to keep my hands warm, I didn't have mittens. To keep my hands warm, he'd put my hand in one of his coat pockets till it got warm, then I'd get on the other side.
Warm the other side.
Warm the other hand.
Yeah.
And he just took care of me.
Real well. When you got married, what kind of presents did you get?
Oh, we got a lot of presents. Good.
Tell what you wore.
Oh, you want to know what I wore?
For your wedding? Okay.
Now, Geneva, you were in on this. You should have told him that.
What'd you wear for your wedding day?
Well, from the inside out.
Oh.
I had long underwear, cotton panties, outing flannel skirt, a muslin skirt on top of that, and a big old corset. You want all that?
Sure.
For stays.
Oh, a real trim, huh?
Oh, yes. And I had,
It's a flannel costume.
well, we called it corset covers then, and it had nice crocheted lace on it. And I had a piece of flannel across the chest because I had asthma and hay fever, you know. And I had to stay warm.
Yeah.
So I had that on. And then I had a pretty blue dress. Oh, I wore long black stockings and high-top shoes, buttoned. Now that was my wedding clothes.
What was the date of her wedding?
So you were married December 24th.
December the 24th, 1916. At home, supposed to be at high noon, but Harvey's folks had to come over from their little town on the interurban, and we had a big snow, and interurban was late, so we waited on them.
And what's the interurban?
Oh, it's a streetcar, big streetcar with a cable.
And it connected the towns?
Run to Indianapolis.
Oh.
And let me see. Harvey was supposed to come over in time for us to go to Sunday school and church. It was on a Sunday. But we had that deep snow, and the streetcars were late, and he missed them both. He wasn't very anxious, was he?
No.
And so we had to get a sleigh and a horse, and had a friend bring him over. And that was our wedding day, and all my relatives came, and after we had our marriage ceremony, then we ate a great big dinner.
Then he came.
Where did you spend the wedding night?
Where did I spend my wedding night? I spent it at home in the living room on a couch that opened up at Davenport. And now what was you going to ask me?
He was working in Illinois at the time, Grandpa was?
He came out here a year before we were married, right around Christmas time, and came back the next Christmas, and we were married.
So was the whole year there you hadn't seen each other?
Just one time.
Oh my. Courted through the mail,
Through the mail. And he said, he got to the place where he didn't know whether to open my letters or not out on the street because he was rooming, you know. So he waited till he got to the room, but that was because I was working in a store and I didn't write on tablet all the time. Sometimes I'd take a brown paper bag. That was terrible. I don't know whether this would be good history or not for everybody.
It's interesting.
Oh,
So you came to Illinois, and what house did you live in first?
well, we roomed to begin with up here on just this side of the railroad track in Bridgeport, where he had been rooming, but he had been eating his meals at the restaurant. So that's what we did for 2 months, and then we moved out on the Fenway lease, where we lived for 20 years in a little flat house.
Green shack.
A little green shack.
How many rooms did it have?
Well, it had 5 rooms, and I think sometimes maybe I had more bedroom than I have here.
How big was your living room?
All right, it was the size of the garage. It was 10 by 12.
That was your living room?
That was my living room.
And now it's your garage, right?
Yes, and a little bit built on.
Okay. And you raised your 5 children there in Finley.
Right.
And tell us a little bit about raising those kids. You still washed in the tub and
Washed in the tub.
and cooked over what kind of a fire?
Well, we had a range, but we had gas, for years. And then, well, I don't know, maybe we had gas all the time in the cook stove. I think we did in the range. But we used some coal in the living room stove. And then we did have some running water there. I forgot that.
Electricity?
No, we had the gas lights until it got weak. The gas got weak, and then we got gasoline lights, and you had to pump them up. And they had a what?
This is okay.
Yeah, Aladdin lamp.
Yeah.
Then after that, we had the Aladdin lamp. I have it now. I still have it.
When did you move over here to this house?
Well, I believe it was in 1936 or 7.
That's when you got electricity.
And that's when I got electricity, right.
And when did you get running water inside the house?
Never got it.
Hi, Angie.
We had, we could pump water in from the cistern. We moved over here in 1937, and you want to know what pieces of furniture I have? I have my dining room table, and I have a dresser or vanity, whichever you want to call it, in the back bedroom that we had. The table cost $20, and the dresser cost $17.
It's made of solid wood.
Well, the table is. I think there might be some veneer on the dresser. I'm not positive about that. And I do have the bed that we went housekeeping with. It's out in the garage. It's an iron bed. Those are the 3 pieces I still have. And I have some one dish, I think, is all I have. That's the celery dish. Okay, that's all I can recall right now.
How much land did Harvey buy over here?
2 and 6,700 acres.
And that was in 1937?
Yes. And we paid, I think, $600 for it, if I recall.
The house.
Oh, yes, with the house on 2 acres and 6,700.
What are your hobbies, Mother?
Oh, my hobbies are crocheting and quilting and fishing quilts and anything work like that I do with my hand. I like to keep busy. So it isn't too much work. Mark that off.
This is some crocheting of Grandma's. She framed it and put it on the wall. And now we'll see some of Grandma's quilting. Come in, tell us about quilting.
Yeah. This is, the name of this quilt is Hummingbird, and I pieced it in 45, just when I finished quilting it, I don't recall, but some call it a snowball quilt, but when I pieced it, it was named a Hummingbird.
And you did it all by hand.
Did it all by hand, I pieced it, and I quilted it.
And you still quilt on quilting frames, don't you?
Right.
And the quilting over in that corner. It looks like you got one to put up pretty soon, don't you?
Well, I got part of it quilted.
Oh. And you put that up in your living room, don't you? It takes up the whole living room.
Sometimes I have it in the living room, sometimes I put it in here. When I was quilting this one here in the corner, I had it up in here. But it takes up the whole room.
It's all done by hand. How many quilts do you think you've made?
Oh, honey, I don't know. I have no idea. I started quilting when I was just a girl. I quilted on with my mother and grandmother. We quilted 7 quilts for me when I was married.
Oh.
And I didn't do it all myself, but I helped quilt them. So I started way back when.
I think so. I'm already on.
Oh, boy. Are we gonna get
I'm gonna
Angie?
get Angie.
Turn it off, Joe.
Oh.
What? See if you-
Really look like way back when.
I don't know.
When were you born again, Grandma? Tell us again. I told us before.
What date was you born? She
I
wants to know.
I was born August 18th, 1895,
August 18th.
Indiana.
Landis, Indiana.
Landis, Indiana. Grady County.
Yes.
Wow. Okay, look at
And how much you did, Ava?
do this quickly. Born
Let me get this.
the man, are you talking?
He wants to know when I was born. I was born, let me get these glasses first. September the 11th, 1922, Lawrence County, Illinois. In Bridgeport, out in the country.
How about you, Ollie?
Well, I'm Audley Aloys, Litherland, Baumgartner, and I was born in Lawrence County at the Lawrenceville Hospital, June 4th, 1951.
No? When was Angie born?
Daddy was
Daddy, take a
Mrs.
picture.
Angela Best. She was born in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, at the Presbyterian Hospital, July 4th, 1981.
Yeah. That's how you pronounce O-I-L. Oh, yeah? Down in Tennessee, you say oil. Oil. Up in Illinois, it's a 3-syllable word.
Oil.
Oil. How are you doing? Oil.
I'm glad I am
Go sit down, please.
Thank you so much.
You gonna blow out the
You gonna open
candle?
up your gifts or nothing?
It surprised me.
Aren't you gonna open your gifts and let me look at them?
You gonna blow out the candle?
Light the candle? Make a big wish.
Make a big wish.
I gotta go around on the other side because they fall away. Next time.
Yeah.
Things she gave. All means only that she's growing old. Tears for the tears were shed to save me. Ages for her heart of pure soul. Genius for her eyes with love like shining. All means right and right shall always be. Put them all together, they spell mother, a word that means the world to me. Thank you. And now Kim has a poem she's going to read. That Angie, come here. Angie. Rose, your daddy. Right here. You can't get out of it. Come over here, Kim. Yeah, was Angie with some poems she could say? Eric wrote it and Kim's going to read it. Who wrote it? Eric wrote it? Who wrote it? Get over here.
That's it.
Your grandmother can hear you. Okay, this poem is called Tribute to Grandmother. 1895, life is great. Oklahoma is not yet a state. President Cleveland, he's our man. Orville and Wilbur are readying a plan. August 18th, summer heat. God's miracle of life is again complete. Baby cries are being sung. Flossie Vio's life has begun. 35 Indiana miles away, a 2-year-old toddler is at play. Sticks and rocks are his game. Harvey Morris is his name. Life goes on, the family divides. The Hatcher family now provides the home that will nourish and guide the destiny of a young lady's life. Years pass on, Flossie's ready to woo the man who becomes her steady. Helping her take a chicken's life is all it takes to make her a wife. One child, 2 children, 4 children, 5. Times are rough in 35. But basic family needs are complete. Food and shelter and spiritual needs. The 40s come, the world's at war, Leo's gone, could there be more? The 50s come, and Daddy's gone, should a woman have to suffer so long? Years of good and years of sorrow have toughened Flossie for years to follow. She's ready now for lots of living along the path that God is giving. The path that provides a special place for influencing others about God's grace. And 24 years of life compiled as the best friend of a special child. 90 years, oh help us Lord to savor the wisdom of the words that Grandma speaks from time to time to guide us down that path so fine. And grant us too, oh Lord, we pray, more time with Grandma like today. Time to talk and time to share, time to cry and time to care. Priceless moments that we dare not forget. Happy 90th birthday, Grandma, we love you.
Yes. Sure, I keep it.
I think we all need copies of that. We all need copies of that.
Okay, Eric wrote that?
Yeah, Eric wrote that.
Eric did. Thank you.
You can't have these with us.
Now grandmother has a presentation to give.
I do?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know the presentation.
Kathy, would you bring the little basket over?
Drum roll.
Okay, let's go.
All the grandchildren.
You're a great-grandchild.
Oh, you're a great-grandchild of mine. How great you are.
Don't you want to find out, grandmother?
Oh! Do I have to stand up?
No.
Okay, get up here. Get our number.
I just made it, what you want to say? I said, pick my number. I made a quilt for each one of the grandchildren. And that's why I want to present these today. I was going to wait a while and let somebody else give it to you, but I thought I'd better do it myself.
I'd like to make a suggestion that she didn't get done. All the girls who know white, so forth, need to put the date and by whom it was made. Pretty soon, you want to put it like that. Yeah, it's in the corner. Okay. That's wonderful. You can improve it. Write it with I like that. Wow. Think of the pictures of the little What's the name of that?
Will you call under this again?
That's pretty. Yeah, you got you now. David.
little thing.
I forgot. Harold, take a picture. Harold, you take a Let me find out. I wore this and I wore
My shirt's in there anywhere, but that's fine with me. I'll put it.
I think she just made that. Who's next? Oh, Kathy, I guess. No, Bonnie. No, I heard that. Pretty? Boy, that's good. That's all you do. That's the way you said you were so late, so you have to read it.
You know it's original that way.
Hey, well, I'm not the youngest, but I guess I go.
Who's older? Kathy's older than we are.
Yeah, I'm older. Your mom is thank you. Oh yeah, I love it. That'd be pretty in his ring.
Well, it's older than the rest. I mean, tell them when you made this. Well, I made this back, I made the box back in 45. Wow. Paul, I'm not going to put them together. And I'd like to say to my grandchildren, they're expecting it. And mine too. Because Paul's been trying to get them making one.
Come on, Eric.
Yeah.
That's what I like to tell my grandma Eric.
I remember.
She's a very unusual person, I'm going to say that. And I admire her determination.
Now, we had in the background.
And her ego, and the music notes that indicates that determination. Amusing stories. Oh, I don't know. We have a lot of laughs, but right now I'm Blake. Let's tell her story.
Yeah, you know, she used to be.
We had a lot of fun together.
She lost a lot of weight.
Oh, she's just an amazing person. I'm not trying to get you in trouble or anything, you know. No. Well, you know, I better be good.
And Mary came down.
Yeah, that's right. This is for the record.
And that was Mom's birthday, and then she died in the fall.
Okay, well, yeah, do you have any music that? Stories you can tell us about Grandma that
That's good. That's really, you guys can take
illustrates her,
I think so. That was our 40th.
determination or strength or...
I think so. 40 years.
I don't think
That was 2 years
I
ago.
can't recall a music anecdote.
But
I will say that I admire her, the lively spirit,
Well, I just told the other
her faith, her love, and Mary looks the same in it.
Okay. Hey.
She's a great lady. Well,
Went there, saw the president.
no.
No.
Hope you look to be married, huh?
He was there over Memorial Weekend.
If I live to be married, I hope I'm in her condition.
Oh, me too. I sure do. And her wit, I'm telling you, she just gets me sometimes.
Do anything that illustrates that wit? Did she tell you a joke the other day?
I tell her joke once in a while, but sometimes she threatens to chase me out of the house. Oh, I forgot it this time. Said it all.
Well, if somebody had a story they could tell, it kind of illustrated some of her strengths, character, fortitude, determination, that kind of stuff. You got any
Determination is one of them.
any stories you could tell us to illustrate some of that?
I could right now.
Keeps you on your toes.
Keep us on our toes. And that all comes from her determination to live for the Lord and have us do the right thing. Looks at you and you know that's it.
She gives you that stern look whenever you think you're not doing something right.
She loves us and she'll do anything for us. I don't want to go on forever. I'll take something after a while. So it's just all love. He's strong with us.
Well, how about a story like when you were growing up? Leonard, can you tell us a story that when you did something wrong and she let you know it?
She lets know it a lot. All stories I'll tell you about here anyhow.
Tell us something, if you remember, tell them.
Anything special?
Did she put the cat out for you once in a while when you bring the cat in the house?
Not really.
You like cats, so I'm just
I like cats. She didn't have in the house.
She didn't allow him in the house.
Not in the house like that. Catch your dog.
Or that house either. You ever act up in church sometime when you got on?
Yes, I did. I got crickets when I got home.
Before you got home?
Usually before I got home. And that was on.
With the switch?
Not too many times to switch.
Anything for 6 years.
Get to leave it. Information.
She'll have some stories to tell. Well, Harold had some, but we couldn't have recorded those.
I'm a son-in-law, you gotta be careful.
Well, Helen, please.
No, I've done said my piece. After I saw Stan turn his thing down the floor, I had another thing or two to say. I should get back to him once in a while with some of my goofy things.
What about Will? Has he told what he knows? No, I haven't. I haven't gotten Roy to... I don't have a whole lot to say, but one thing I heard Harold say a few minutes ago is how tired she is. If the car's ready to go, she's always ready to go. She's ready to go. If you tell her you're getting in the car, then she can... Yeah, and she's a good traveler.
Yeah.
Do you have an incident where that happened that you can remember not too
Well, we took her last Thanksgiving. We took her to Florida and went back right before Christmas, or when was it? Before or after Christmas? After Christmas, yeah. And brought her back, and she traveled Florida about 700 miles real well. Sometimes the next day she might have to recuperate a little while, sleep late or something. She's a good traveler. That's great. I can't think of it.
Did you ever start to go somewhere and she let you know that she wanted to be invited, or?
No, she never did invite herself, I don't think. She's always invited. Yeah, if you invite her, she's always ready. Nearly always ready.
I get a kick out of her now. She doesn't like to wear seat belts, so she sits in the back seat. And I have to chauffeur her, so I told her the other day I was going to have a glass panel put between the front and back and put in a telephone, and she can buy me a uniform.
Next to the last time she's taken her driver's test, she told me about taking her driver's test in that Corvair. Said she walked up to the patrolman comes up to the car and says, now this car has seat belts in it. You can wear them if you want to, but I don't want to. And said she passed the driver's test.
How about you, Eric? You got any stories you want to tell about Grandma?
Well, let's see, Grandma taught me how to crochet.
Taught you how to crochet?
How to crochet. I learned how to make little chains with the crochet needle. I guess Grandma helped keep me kicking for the first few weeks, didn't she? My mom, I guess she was here. She put a lot of that on me, though. She said, he's your baby, you take care of it. Wasn't that just across the road over here? Yes, across the road.
Did you ever get out of line and she had to get after you?
Yeah. I'm trying to think now. She used to get me when I would correct him. I correct him too much. She straightened me and Mary out a few times when we'd get into it.
You and Mary, I bet you were a team, weren't you?
Well, yeah, we'd rock leave David.
And you were off leave David.
Then we'd be in trouble, yeah.
The stories I heard was that, you and David, or you and Mary went off leave Lottie.
And me and David, we'd get down there and then rock leave Lottie then.
Yeah.
Well, let's see, what else is Grandma? I can remember her correcting me once pretty good, but I can't remember what the definition was.
Were you outside or inside?
I don't remember. You want to turn that thing off while I think about it?
Okay.
No, give me this. I'm just going to get
You gotta say hi to your boyfriend. You said hi to your boyfriend 2 years ago. It was Kurt. Yeah, do it now.
Kurt? Oh, gross. Well, I'm not sure.
I think it was Kurt. Wasn't it 2 years ago it was Kurt? I think that's right.
You probably did.
Well, he's good. Now he's good.
Yeah.
Tell me who it is.
Well, I don't know if it'll be when I get home, but right now it's Patrick. We're going to get too much, but I think he went out with somebody last night.
Well, did you find out?
Well, it's just a rumor right now, but I got the facts about it right now.
Dad, can you remember some of the words that Grandma didn't like that you used when you first started coming around the Erexson house? Bull. Bull. Well, I never did say anything. I don't reckon that she didn't like it. Well, somebody was saying, I remember when she said bull. Didn't you used to say shucks or something all the time? I don't remember the first mom. He's got him there.
He doesn't remember. He's got a poor memory right now.
There's only one bus.
Mom!
Group that's got an air.
Mom!
Want me to go get her?
Yeah, there's something else now. I know this is a true story.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, when you're on camera, it's just sort of...
Lapse of memory when you're on the camera.
That's right.
Isn't it a true story that when Dad first started visiting the Erexson house, that he used the word shucks like that, and Grandma didn't like it?
Yes, that was one of his favorite words.
One of them Tennessee words, wasn't it?
Yeah, we weren't allowed to say anything like that. He said, shut up.
I don't remember. You've already lost that word.
Well, I went out there, I don't know, find some information.
Where's Geneva? She busy in the kitchen?
Yeah, I want Geneva on the hot spot.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
she's
sit right here and watch it. Yeah, your mom will have it.
No, man, I believe I'm wrong now. Instead of shucks, it was shoot. Yeah, I'm saying, it was shoot. It was shoot. It was called Bill. Bill didn't like to ever tell him that.
No, you didn't call it bull.
Yeah, you didn't pronounce that unit properly.
Now, don't get me in here.
Okay, there go Terrell. Oh, he's gone. He's got a camera shot. It'd be hard for 60 minutes to catch him, wouldn't it? It really would. It wouldn't be 60, it'd be 6 seconds. Well, you know, David.
Hi there. What would you like?
Grandma had to take the switch after you?
No, she didn't have to take the switch after me at home.
She just looked at you cross-eyed and you knew that you were doing something wrong?
Right. She always knew I was such a good little boy, I didn't have to say anything like that.
Tell the truth, David.
I can't tell the truth. It's too embarrassing.
That's okay, Leonard. And just go find your place.
I remember one time I was riding with Grandma on the way home from Bridgeport. In an old 49 Plymouth, I believe it was. And we were seeing how fast the car would go. Got up to 85 miles an hour.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Who was driving?
Grandma was driving. I wasn't old enough to drive.
Grandma drove 85 and
Yeah.
for a quarter.
That was not in a quarter. That was
How
half
much do I remember that?
She remembers it, I'm sure.
That was in Bridgeport, in her house?
Yeah.
Were you the one that asked her how fast it goes?
I think so. Yeah.
She went ahead and just showed you, huh?
She showed me. One time she hit the brakes and my head hit the windshield and busted the windshield open too. I don't know how old it was.
How old were you then?
I don't know. About 5 or 6. It didn't hurt me. Just me and Grandma in the car. That was it. I wasn't driving. I don't know what car that was. Probably one of the other premise.
Driving back to the cemetery on Marcel, and the door was ajar, and she fell out.
No, I don't remember her calling that. But she was driving the car?
She's driving the car. The door was ajar, and she fell out, and
Yeah, I didn't tell you that story.
Yeah.
this is a story about Grandma driving home from the cemetery one day, and the door was ajar. She was alone this time. She fell out, but she didn't stay landed very long because her car was still going down the road. And so she told her husband after the car. She felt sore afterwards, but she really didn't have any bad problems. Yeah, what's that, Grandma? Yeah, was that Grandma? Grandma Erexson. I don't know nothing about that.
Yeah, you can't photograph you there. It's too light behind you unless you pull a curtain.
Mom, here.
Who else has any?
Please. I don't want to be on camera.
She didn't want to be on camera.
You don't give you time to think. You have on yet? Yeah. He'll give you this time to think, doesn't he? Now, David told a story about when Grandma went 85 between Bridgeport and the house. Just pointing out how fast the car would go. Well, not really, thinking of something like that is not really my strong point. I can remember Hey, I'm in the still not with Grandma.
What?
One thing that she always did was have Bible reading. Before we went to bed. One thing I remember. Singing on the front porch out there with her and talking about everything in the world. Any particular story come to mind? No. Remember those types of things, just not very much trouble. I don't know what happened yesterday. I don't know what happened 30 years ago. He eats up there with that dinner.
That's a watch, but I
Did you ever take a switch at you? There may be a couple of occasions where she's looked at me, but I don't think I have to listen to how to do it. My lot of time about expiring. Stories about Grandma. Get your hand down so we can hear you.
She's got a birthday.
She's got a birthday.
She got a birthday?
Yeah. 90.
90, that's right.
How old are you, Lisa? 25. I said 25.
Are you 25 or 24? 24. Okay. Do you go see Grandma a lot?
Yeah.
What do you do when you go to Grandma? Eat. What else?
You said tea, don't you?
Yeah. I have to learn off some birthday.
Have wash dishes?
No?
You don't have wash dishes?
Do you make apple pie? You don't? Cookies?
No?
You play games? Yeah, what kind of games do you play?
What's your favorite game?
Bingo.
What's your favorite game, Lisa?
I don't know.
Bingo? Is it bingo?
Yeah. Daddy, I'll take one of these numbers.
Do you ever call Grandma on the telephone, talk to her?
Yeah.
You call on the phone, do you?
Yeah.
What's her telephone number?
I don't know.
You don't know her telephone number? What number is it?
Buttons.
Buttons.
Yeah.
What buttons you dial?
Yeah, I know. I live right next door to my mother, and you don't know Flopsy like I do. That's exactly Flopsy's hat.
Nancy.
And refashionable diapers. Refashionable. That's cool.
Yeah. Rings on David. No way.
Okay. Wow, you're on TV. I don't have any candidates out there. Please call.
Uncle Harvey used to go to Wisconsin, and we went up there with him one fall, or was it fall? Yeah, it was fall, wasn't it? We went fishing up on Little Pine Lake, and I think probably over the life, all you had to do was say, let's go, and she ready to go, wasn't you? Didn't take her long to get past, huh? Heck, I guess the main thing, probably the thing that sticks out in my mind, though, as much as anything, was back then, of course, we had two boats to fish in. Janie and I fished in one boat, and Harvey and Plessy fished in the other one, but one day the girls stayed in, and Harvey and I went out in the fog and fishing, and Harvey hooked into a 36-inch northern, and it took him and I both to get it landed, but, something like that, you don't very often catch a fish, like that, and I guess that probably stands out as much as anything, so.
About the first time you ever met me.
Huh?
Do you remember the first time you ever met us?
No, I can't.
Ever came out? You don't remember those? Well, I don't either. I thought maybe you did.
No, did you ever have any words in your vocabulary that Grandma didn't like? We found out Roy used to say, shoot.
Shut.
Well, I imagine I could say some too, but I have a pretty good vocabulary. But I don't show it to everybody. Hey, when you're raised on a farm and go to the school that I went to, you acquired it.
You appreciate it.
And of course, I work in the shop, and they have pretty good vocabulary there too.
You ever see Grandma take a switch to any of the grandkids?
You mean her?
Yeah.
No.
I'll tell about my instant getting touched.
See, of course, we were away, and he wasn't there nothing.
I remember one time when Grandma was chasing me with a switch.
She was. What had you done?
I don't remember that part, but I remember being chased with a switch. And it must have started up at her house. And I decided to run away from her, and I ran down to our house. And I got in Mother and Dad's bedroom and locked the door. Of course, their bedroom always had two doors to it. So when she finally got down to our house, found out I locked the one door, she was heading around to the other one. Well, smart me, headed up the first door. And Elena saw me and wanted to know what was happening. I said, well, Grandma's chasing me with a switch. She said, you just better stand still and take it. So I did. but Grandma was really determined. Even though she knew I could run a lot faster than she could, she just kept chasing me until, so I gave up. And that's really the only time I really remember Grandma getting a switch after me. And I had no idea what transgression I had done. I must be like, oh, I'm sure I
never whipped any of them unless they needed it.
Yeah, I thought it was about
Sometimes I missed.
I was for like 5 or 6. I don't know what I'd done wrong.
Always corrected with the grandchildren, the same as the my own children. How about it, boy? Is that true?
Probably true.
We need it. Stay straight when we was at Grandma's house.
Now, David told a story about how when he was 5 or 6, he asked you how fast the car would go, and so you showed him? You got up to about 85, is that right?
Oh, surely not. Car would go 85.
Guaranteed it did.
Oh, this is back when the speed limit was 70.
Yeah, that was
Well, I don't do those things anymore. Maybe that's what wore out my car.
He said that was in a Plymouth, he thought.
Oh, is that Redwood?
Yep.
Oh, yeah, 49. Pretty good old
pretty
Plymouth.
fast.
Well, I've calmed down a lot.
In 30 years.
And she's related somewhere now. We're going to let her explain it.
Well, my father and Harvey were brothers, and I'm Emma Jane, what most of the family call me.
And your dad's name was?
My dad was Clinton,
Okay.
and he died in 1935. My
Your
mother,
maiden name was Erexson.
yes, my maiden name was Erexson, and my mother and the Erexson family continued to be real good friends, and we loved to go to Illinois to visit the family. That was my best memories of childhood. Everybody was so loving down there at Flossie's. Nobody fought like the kids nowadays do. And we just had a barrel of fun. We didn't do anything outstanding, but it was just fun to be together. And I remember all the love that family had that I wish everybody could have.
And you have a sister.
Mary. She's about a year and a half younger than I am, and she lives in Michigan.
And there's the two of you.
Yes, just the two of us.
Your dad. You lost
Okay.
it.
We'll try to get Mary Ruth on the table.
Everybody sing, we want you to do it. Sing.
I don't know.
Oh, yeah, just a blow. Sit back there, you blow.
No, Andy, he's coming out. I'm taking him. How old were you when you started playing?
Oh, I started playing when I was about in the 7th grade, high school. I'd I'd buy one, then I'd try to learn to play it. And when you first buy them, there's a little book in with them that tells you how to blow and circle until it gets music. Then you just go from there, just try to learn to play. And I expect I
Did you ever have any formal lessons yet?
No, just all learn it by ear.
Practice, huh?
Just practice, yeah. Roy's good on him, he can play them.
Yeah? I
No, I didn't have lessons in him, but he can play them good.
I've had lessons, I guess, on the guitar.
Yeah. You'll get the guitar here, I can play it. But on the harmonicas, it's just more or less all by ear. And the extra notes you just have to put in by ear. So, I've had quite a few of them. Oh, I can't die.
You didn't bring me one with you down
way we can get it, Roy. I'll follow you. That's all right. I'll follow you. That's fine. That's what these people know. Well, what did you say? That's fine. Let's pick it up. I got my flyer. That's what I had been taught to do. So safety notes.
Your mom.
Next.
Did Nancy play?
Did you take lessons, Mary? Did you take lessons? No. Angie, don't play with it, it's not a toy. Angie, that's
It just didn't make it with me all the time, that was all. But, I got it, and I got to change clothes. Didn't have to wear the same one.
Oh, you can tell how Grandma meant to you for years.
Yeah, she's been very special. The whole family has. It's very unusual for a family like this to have me in my position to remain as we have.
Get close throughout the years.
We have all through the years. They have been to my home, and we have come down to theirs. And I hope that the family will always accept me as a friend.
About a story about Leo, maybe you could tell.
Well, Leo was an unusual person. I'll never forget one thing. One time, I have a picture. I'll have to bring it the next time. It's him and I walking down the street, and I was awfully mad at him. And then I have several pictures that I'm going to bring next time, so the family can see some of them that they haven't seen before. But Leo was an exception person.
What unit do you serve in World War
The
II?
infantry.
In Europe?
He was killed in the Battle of Bulge,
Oh,
but he was in,
you don't know what division that was?
on the Stone. I just don't really know. I just don't remember. I think it was Company K.
And you were saying yesterday that was your anniversary?
Yes.
You saw it 43 years ago. 43 years ago.
Yesterday. It was nice to be with the family on that day.
We're just glad you got to be here for the
I am
reunion.
too,
for the
and I
90th.
hope if you have another novel.
I can't argue, but can't think of anything.
I know, when you're right.
Very good, thank you.
I'll be your next.
Sing along.
I'll sing a song.
Okay.
You come in. All right, let's out the door, you mean like that, you
Sing along with Dottie. I know which key you want to do then. Oh, wait, wrong key.
Thank you.
Brown.
I didn't know you played by your old insurance. I don't know why. She made songs and that's it.
Birthday, that's today, isn't it? Today's her birthday,
And
August 18th.
our two kids, Angela turned 9 this summer and Lewis turned 4 in 10 days. And I thought you just had one. You didn't know we had 2 kids? Were you surprised?
That's right, you haven't seen it.
4 years old. Well, you know, the other was just little.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's about 8 years now. She was 4.
Yeah.
That's probably about how long we sing ago. I know. She's just another union.
When she turns 100, we'll all be here.
I move that we have it in Florida.
Florida, you want to do it in Florida next time?
I don't know if we'll get Grandma down there or not.
I know it. We're gonna say, oh, Auntie Grandma, get on the jet whether she likes it or not.
Yeah,
I know it. I got that on
thanks for
tape.
eyeball.
Then you do. Then you have something kind of strange.
Grandpa takes the one now.
Blue flea. Have you done a back flip? Front flip? Oh. You do one-handed?
You got a heat sinking missile
I'll bet you know.
Uh-oh, I did a good shot and I brought on. That was nice.
You always got a nice smile.
Joe.
Thank you, That's very good. You like Hello, Josh.
Josh and Aaron forever. Oh. What are you gonna do, get married? Next year or next 5 years? Yeah.
What kind of camera you got there, John?
Don't you VCR the VCR?
See, that's a camcorder, right?
That's not.
Is that VHS or Beta?
What is this, Mom? Beta or VHS? Beta.
Beta? Okay. Got the little tape. Oh, it is VHS?
Yeah.
Okay. Dueling cameras here. When you came to the reunion, when we had a picnic out in the park there by Bridgeport.
Yeah. That's when I was up there at Mary's house.
Oh, you did go to Mary's house? That's 5 years ago.
There.
Oh, were you? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. How old are you now?
18.
17 possibly.
God, you know.
Came back on the recorder, huh? Well, we'd like to record special events in your life, like when you were born and when Grandma was born and when you guys met, and how you met and when you married, and all about your kids and things.
I've been in love with a girl just a mile up the road.
Uh-huh.
And she met a cousin and she wrote me love and she didn't mean she gave me the mitten. I just went down the road just a mile and got breathless.
Uh-huh.
And she was a worker at Bridgeport as a domestic. And I went to Bridgeport every Sunday Sunday evening to Sparker.
Oh, you did?
And I'd bought a horse and I would take a note in my pocket for $100 and somewhere I left the poor big fellow in my pocket on the ground and $100 note in it.
You lost $100.
And I put my horse in my livery barn. I was going to have to go back and hunt for that pocketbook and the livery man said he's an old frog hunter asleep back in the back part of the house and he got an electric lantern that he was selling for $1. I gave him $1 for the electric lantern and turned their back cracked. And I went with about 2 bullets till the leg was put in the upside down.
Oh, it wasn't too far away.
And boy,
Good.
did I grab that up and put it in my pocket.
Glad nobody else found it.
And nobody else has beaten it up. I took the ladder back to the programmer, and he didn't want to take it back in.
Oh, you didn't want to give your daughter back, huh?
He didn't want to give my daughter back.
So you courted Grandma by going into Bridgeport on your horse on Sunday evening?
Driving a horse to a buggy.
Oh.
And there were three of us that bought shoes too small. I bought shoes just one size too small for me.
Oh.
And we were out at Bridgeport Park, and we all took her shoes off and so we could rest her feet. And one part of the sudden, if you'd have bought your shoes to fit your feet instead of your head. And started home that night, and my shoes were hurt, and I fell off the bed, and I was took it over the dashboard and pulled part of the way off, and eased the pain in my foot. And I pulled the shoe clear off and fell down on the ground.
Oh.
Well, I got home one night, one shoe.
Well, can you tell us the date and the year that you were born?
It was 1891.
Well, that sounds about right, 1891.
September 8th.
September 8th?
September 8th.
And what was the names of your parents?
My mother's name was Mary Shorten, and of course she was Tom Litherland. There's only four of them Tom Litherland around St. Francis.
Oh, there was? Only one of them was your dad, huh?
Just one of them was dad.
Then how many children did they have? How many brothers and sisters did you have?
Why, I think I had 5.
The only one I remember is Aunt May.
My aunt, our older sister, Eva, died when she was 18 of tuberculosis. And
18 years old?
she was 18 years old when she died.
Huh.
And then May was next, and then Kate,
Yeah.
then Lawrence, and then Lois, and then Lawrence. Lawrence was the old baby when his mother died.
Oh. So
And
you
they
were
were-
pretty young when your mother died.
I was just 3.
Oh.
And the neighbor woman had just given birth to a new baby, and she took my brother and nursed the 2 babies until my youngest brother got old enough that he could nurse a bottle. And she brought him back, and Eva and Dad raised him. I don't know. I can't figure out yesterday raised him. But he made a big step in his mind.
I bet so. Yeah. And then, when did you marry Grandma?
On August the 2nd, 1915.
Okay.
Where at?
Yeah.
But we were married in the courthouse in Lawrenceville.
Oh.
We didn't go to it. We didn't have a church wedding. We just...
How old were you and how old was she when you got married?
I was 25 and she was just on the verge of 18.
Oh.
She was still 17 when we were married.
Yeah. Well, where was your first home?
Where Virgil is now all the lives, that was our... The first cabin that we had built was, Dad built a 2-room log cabin. It had 2 rooms to it. The only cabin in the country that had 2 rooms. And he bought 5 acres of wooded timber up